Hello, this is my screencast. Um, let's start. The Cuban Missile Crisis was a 13-day Cold War struggle between the Soviet Union and Cuba against the United States. After the U.S. put nuclear missiles in Turkey and Italy aimed at Soviet Russia, the Russians put missiles in Cuba aimed at the U.S., which almost led to nuclear war, but ended with an agreement and both powers withdrawing their missiles along with the U.S. agreeing not to invade Cuba. Vietnam was a proxy war fought by North Korea, who was backed by the USSR, and South Korea, who was backed by the United States. This war was started as a way for the U.S. to prevent communist takeover of South Vietnam. In 1960 is when the U.S. started getting really involved, throwing troops in and going nowhere. The war ceased to go on in 1973 when the U.S. withdrew and the war ended in 1975 when North and South Vietnam unified. The Korean War between the Republic of Korea, who was South Korea, and the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea was the result of political division of Korea by an agreement by the Allies at the end of the war. The United Nations backed South Korea because North Korea had started a communist government. The fighting ended in 1953 when the armistice agreement was signed. The Berlin airlift was a response to the Berlin blockade, which was where the Soviets and the Germans blocked the Western Allies' access to Berlin, which was under Allied control. Doing this was supposed to force the Allies to let the Soviets take control of Berlin to give the Berlin people the supplies which they so desperately needed. In response, the Allies made the Berlin airlift to get supplies to the people of West Berlin from air forces of the U.S., the British, the Canadians, the Australians, the New Zealanders, and the South Africans. The airlift worked and got Berlin the supplies it needed, making the Russians look very foolish. The blockade was abandoned in 1949 due to the creation of two separate German states. The fall of the Berlin Wall. The wall was created by East Germany in 1961 to cut off West Germany from them and East Berlin. This wall lasted almost 30 years. When nearing the end of its time, East Germany faced many political changes which resulted in the taking down of the Berlin Wall, which started the German reunification. NAFTA and the Warsaw Pact are two different agreements by many different peoples actually. The Warsaw Pact was a treaty among the 8 European communist states, and NAFTA was a trading agreement between the North American countries. The Marshall Plan, or the European Recovery Program, was America's way of aiding the European countries after the war, which the U.S. gave $13 billion in help to these European countries to prevent the spread of communism and hope that there would not be an uprising like Nazi Germany after World War I. The plan went on for 4 years, starting in 1948, which ended mostly successful. The Truman Doctrine was a policy made by President Harry Truman, which said the U.S. would give Greece and Turkey aid as long as they agreed not to join the Soviets. This is the main starting point of the Cold War and the containment policy to make sure the Soviets don't spread their communist ideals. Truman said the U.S. would help any country with military and financial aid who is being threatened by communism or the Soviet Union. Truman also said that if Greece or Turkey did not accept this aid, that they were in big risk of being taken by the Soviet Union. The result was successful, and Germany and Turkey both joined NATO, which in turn secured their safety from the Soviet Union. In the late 1980s, the Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev looked to turn the Soviet Union from communism to democracy. He introduced glasnost, which made the government more open about what they were doing, and perestroika, which was supposed to restructure the government in an attempt to turn themselves into a democracy. Later in time, President Boris Yeltsin of Russia banned the Communist Party and ended communism throughout Russia forever. That is the end of my screencast.